Hi, I'm a few minutes late because I thought I was recording. And welcome to Simple Strategies to Create Your Extraordinary Life. So, what I want to talk about today is the idea of emotional triggers and how they impact your life. So, we all have triggers. And they developed when we were children. And usually, what happened as kids, because we were really unable to express ourselves in a powerful way, what we did was either cry, have a tantrum, or withdraw. And that those are the reactions that we still have today of fight, flight, or flee when we get under fight, flight, or freeze, rather, when we are experiencing a trigger. So these triggers now as adults, we can really handle. And in fact, it behooves us to handle the triggers because they're our responsibility. We can no longer meaningfully blame our parents or our siblings or friends or colleagues at work. It's our job to take ownership of whatever happens to us going forward. So when we get triggered by something that was said out of turn to us, that was said in a nasty way, or that we interpreted in a nasty way, or that hurt us, what happens is we get to a place of shame or of anger or fear or distrust. We start to gossip or we withdraw. We have all kinds of ways of responding to our emotional triggers. Often they're not healthy. The fact that we're getting triggered is not great. So what we want to learn is how to stabilize ourselves in the face of emotional triggers. So there are many ways of doing this, but the most effective thing to be able to do is first to identify the emotional trigger that we're experiencing. So, for example, where does this come from? Did this come from a history of feeling ignored or neglected, or that you could not really trust, or you were criticized by a parent, by somebody in your life? Knowing where it came from is a very powerful source for being able to heal that reactivity that we experience. So emotional triggers show up in all kinds of ways, in around the Thanksgiving table, around the board meeting, in the hospital where you work. There are so many places where it could happen. There are very few trigger-free zones in our lives if we're walking around not conscious of what's happening on an emotional level, on a mind-body level, if you will. So identifying where it comes from doesn't usually happen once you're triggered. It happens once you've come down from the trigger, you're calmer, you're back in your body, you're not feeling as charged. That's a great time to practice doing some breathing, and then really getting mindful or thoughtful about, where did I experience that in my mind and body? Or what were the thoughts surrounding that? And what is the origin of that? Because if you understand the origin of that and make the decision that I understand this and I don't have to keep repeating this cycle, this repetition that occurred, that has been happening for so many years, that happens with a parent, or usually it's from your family of origin. It doesn't have to be. It could be from a teacher criticizing you, telling you you're a terrible artist. And so now sometimes when you start doing something creative, you feel like, oh, I'm not worthy. This is not really art. This is not really a craft. Or a parent who just, no matter what, if you got an A-, criticize, where's the A? Or why do you look like that? Why do you dress like that? There are so many old messages that we carry around. And while you might not ever be able to eradicate those old messages, what you can do is change the way you respond to those triggers going forward. And knowing the origin kind of sets you free. At least it puts you on the path to being set free from that reactivity. So once you understand and you start to breathe and think about, okay, where did that come from and why do I respond and then get so charged around that? And then what you can do is know that you now have an opportunity to make a choice. And in fact, it's your responsibility to make a choice. You can choose to do the same old thing and have this reactivity and go crazy or withdraw or shut down and do this song and dance that you're used to doing when you get triggered or, just enraged. Or you could say, okay, I can do this differently now. I can make a different choice. Instead of getting all worked up, maybe I'm going to get curious about why that person said that, or what that really means coming from that person, and isn't what I think. And it's awesome when you check it out. Sometimes you may be way off base, and sometimes you're not, and that person is responding to you maybe in response to the way you're behaving. There are a multitude of reasons that people respond to you and you respond to them. But what you can do and what you need to know is that the way you respond to everyone in your life is up to you, no matter who it is, no matter what their position of power is and what yours is, that you get to choose how you show up and respond to others. And you could either lead in a powerful way, really embodying yourself and being able to have conversations, even the toughest of conversations, and remain in your body and remain able to deal with whatever comes your way. And it happens when you do the breathing to stay grounded and then allow yourself to step into the fear of responding rather than reacting. And sometimes it takes some real personal character and strength to say, this is how I feel and this is what I stand for, or I would like to know what that means when you speak to me that way, rather than simply having the same reactions. This puts you in such a place of personal empowerment. And I'm not suggesting that anybody could just do this when you're not used to doing this. It takes practice, but with practice, you could really retrain your brain so that you're coming from a place of greater leadership, of greater equanimity. It doesn't take the same toll on you emotionally. I know that the ways that I used to get charged and reactive, and can still get reactive, but for the most part, my personal reactivity has changed. My reactivity, not just personal, has changed dramatically over the years. And I've practiced it very regularly because I used to be kind of out of control with the way I reacted to circumstances that felt unfair, or in which I felt criticized or put down. And those comments I don't perceive them, for one thing. I generally don't perceive them the same way, but I definitely don't react to them the same way. I've learned much more consciously how to respond to difficult situations. And I want you to know that that is entirely, if I could do it, anybody could do it. And I want to say that that's entirely possible for you, and that it really is a matter of practice. And not necessarily that much practice, it kind of depends on you, but over time, you will notice a difference. I can say that if you start practicing, stopping, understanding where the trigger is coming from, breathing, and knowing that you have a choice. You could react this way, or you could respond this way in a more conscious, intentional, deliberate, meaningful way. that will lead to greater empowerment, or that leads to a loss of self-esteem, that you could create loss of self-esteem or greater self-esteem by the way you respond to a situation, because nobody feels good after a freak out. Nobody feels good after they've let loose, especially on loved ones or anybody for that matter. It could be somebody at a counter that you're taking out your anger on inappropriately because of a trigger that happened earlier in the day. So the ripple effect is really not healthy. And I encourage you, once again, it's identifying the trigger, maybe not while you're in the trigger, but after the fact, when you've come down, breathing, knowing that you have a decision to make, and thinking about brainstorming what those choices are, and then practicing until you make the skill of managing your emotional triggers a really powerful strength of yours, because you could create that strength within you over time with practice. So I hope this is helpful, and I'd love to hear your comments about this. Please, any messages that you leave, I would be happy to respond to, and I look forward to your comments. So I will see you next week for another episode of Simple, Not Easy Strategies, but Simple Strategies to create your extraordinary life. Bye for now.